Hi there, I'm Mohammed. This is Pun. So we're from Adzooma, a marketing technology company which develops technology to help marketers launch and optimize campaigns in a much smarter way using leading AI. Pun has recently joined us after being head of PPC at PhD, so comes with a lot of knowledge. I've been at Adzooma for around a year. Prior to that, I was at Google, where I was looking after partnerships for the UK and Ireland. That was my official role. I actually had a more secret role, which I looked at was Master of Research. When you do partnerships, you realize very quickly, in order to execute, launch, and make them work, you need to know everything about everything. You're constantly dealing with new verticals, new clients. You need to understand their business, get into their heads a little bit, and you become very good at researching. There's a quote from Abraham Lincoln that says, if you have 6 hours to cut down a tree, spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. And that's a very accurate analogy to use for research and the need for research. A more pressing thing is I've never heard anyone apportion time to figuring out which tree to cut down. And when you think about it, this is very similar to the way marketers operate. We sort of have a strategy that we summon up from somewhere that must work, and then we spend time researching on it, and then we launch it. But there's not enough time in the pre-phase of actually, do we understand the market? Do we understand what's really happening? So we're going to talk today about not only research, but the execution part of it too, because research is wasted if it's not executed properly. So I think if there's one thing that you take from the whole talk is the fact that research is not a static entity. You have to keep iterating, you have to keep moving. Things change really quickly. So in other words, things change fast. And basically the best way to put this is, people call it a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, cautious, and ambiguous. I probably wouldn't go that far, but what I would say is things are changing quickly, and there are winners and losers emerging. And typically, it's due to who's paying attention. You can look back at Kodak and the digital camera, you look at Nokia and the smartphone, it's littered with examples of who's paying attention, who's spotting trends, who's using research best. There are 3 main trends that are happening. People are becoming way more curious than ever before. 15% of Google searches have never been searched before, ever. So people are very curious, and they're getting answers from that, and that answers are feeding a more demanding nature from us. 64% of us expect an Amazon-like experience when we're shopping, regardless of what company you're operating with. So there are the benchmarks now that you have to achieve to. That is the online reality that everyone has to play in. There's no point saying it's not fair, I'm not Amazon size, I don't have the resources. The customer doesn't care. And the final part is people are becoming way more impatient than ever before. The average time spent on a website is 5 seconds, which literally means that people are hovering over the exit button as soon as they've gone onto your website that you've optimized and done all this beautiful copy for. People are talking about a 5th P in marketing, which is proximity. People want things now, and they want it near them, and they're not willing to compromise on that as well. In terms of research, there are 3 overlapping themes that are occurring and also driving the type of research you can do and the effectiveness it can have. The first is data access and processing. So everyone knows about big data. If you think about 5 years ago, it was something everyone talked about at a corporate level but couldn't really leverage. And that's kind of a thing of the past now. And the way the data we have to manipulate is incredible. In 1988, there was a researcher who basically developed the first speech recognition independent AI. And he used 100 megabytes to do that, which is around 5 songs in today's time. He then moved on to Apple, where he got to work with a data set of around 1 gigabyte. Notable to say as well, that 100 megabytes was the largest data set in the world at that time. Moved on to Apple, where he worked with 1 gigabyte. Today, people train AI algorithms on over 100 terabytes, which is a magnitude of 1 million greater than what he originally built that with. So that's the data that people have access to play with now. There's a demographic shift happening as well, where you can actually figure out who you're transacting with in this online world. their preferences, the things that they do, whether they are willing to exchange their data for free services, what times they shop, what days, what type of products they like. You can leverage that now. 16 to 24-year-olds spend an average of 34.5 hours online every week. And that is attention you can't even begin to fathom. That's over a day every single week online. And I think most of us sit in that bucket as well. And then there's a technological innovation happening. A lot of platforms are being developed now that basically make it very easy for everyone to leverage this technology. It used to be something for big people. You can't play, you can't get involved. Technologies are changing that, platforms are changing that. It's definitely something Adzooma are doing as well. We look at the marketing landscape and we're saying, how can we make it easier for corporates, for smaller businesses, for agencies? How do we build technology so you don't always have to build your own every single time and keep up with that constant development? So we understand data, we understand how it's changing, we understand how research is changing. How do we leverage that? And that's the next key bit that I want to talk about. I look at 3 stages. Number 1, the setup, which is really getting your methodology right. Like, are you grounded in facts? Did you just talk to your client and they thought something and you just ran with that? Like, is that grounded in solid research? The performance element, which means putting it into play and testing it out and iterating on that. And then you have the control, which is the sort of, I guess, master control to see, is it working? Should we be doing more? If it's going well, what more can we do? So just taking a quick look at setup. There are really 2 parts here. There's a generic setup in terms of general knowledge, and then there's more of a specific element too. So if you look at generic setup, the first thing I say to everyone, it's counterintuitive, but you really need to understand the world in general. There is no plan that any of you can create right now that can battle the winds of the universe. If oil prices go up, your plan goes to pot. If the US is having trade talks with China that aren't going well, your whole client strategy goes away. So you need to understand what's happening, what prices are pound trading at. Like, very simple day-to-day things that can have a huge impact on the most perfect of strategies. You can use tools like Statista to get more granular level data about your industry, and you can get some great things there that can inform your decision-making. At a more specific level, you can leverage third-party data. So you could use companies like the local data company to figure out about locations and footfall and everything else, and bring that into your research methodology. You can also just create your own. You can use surveys, you can use beacons, questionnaires, loyalty programs, whatever it might be. You can leverage that information and that research, that technology, to make yourself a lot better. Second part is the perform element. And this is typically where most of you would stop. I've done my research, here's a plan, hand it over to the planner, and they'll just go and execute it. It just doesn't work like that. Things just don't work like that. Even the best companies continue to iterate. So a good way of doing it is to not be too precious about the hard work you did in the beginning phase. Be ready to rip that up if you have to. And there are great tools like usertesting.com where you can basically have users live test your hypothesis in front of you, giving you feedback, and then deciding whether to run with that or not. This is also a really interesting phase because you have a lot of responsibility now. Rewind 10 years ago, your CTO would have bought a technology, planted it, deployed it between 1,000 people, and just ran off. Nowadays, you can cancel subscription within a week. You can be on a new platform, new changes. So even if you're using something that works, you always want to be constantly looking at what's next, what's the best thing for that. And then the last bit is really control. So there's a great quote from a management guru called Peter Drucker, and he says, you can't manage what you can't measure. So unless you have the controls and the measurement tools in place in a business from a high level, like, is your marketing activities linked to your finance? Are you closely monitoring that? You'll never know. There are great tools for smaller businesses like Nine Spokes that you can have a simple dashboard to sort of communicate that with, or grow.com. And then if you want to test from a more hypothesis level, you can use tools such as Mixpanel or Hotjar, and you can basically see, all the hypotheses I'm doing correct from more of a granular level, so you can have that control as well. And of course, no research is ever complete, and even if you're doing great, there's always room to be doing more. You know, there are great tools from Intel that you can use. So for instance, you can look at a global product data list of new products, so you can almost say, oh wow, 30% of new beauty products have argan oil in them. Is there a trend here that I'm missing? Are there things that are happening that I don't know about? So it's all about the data that you're not leveraging, even if things are going well, and that can feed ideas for the next iteration. So that's a little bit about research, but again, it's nothing without great execution. So Pun here will just talk to you about executing as well.
Hello. Oh, it works. Great. Thank you, Sal. So we've obviously talked about the research element of things. Quick question to everyone. How many of you work in paid search here? Fair few. Social? As many? SEO? Few at the back. And any other digital programmatic affiliates? Nice. All right, brilliant. I'll get on to why I asked that in a bit. But when we talk about execution, there's really three different things you have to think about, right? Number one, activation. Number two, optimization. And then number three, analysis. Now, for those of you who are specialists, you'll think that this is very top line. There's obviously a lot more to think about, but we're looking at it from a research and strategy perspective over here. So, what does activation involve? Well, I mean, for every one of you who works in digital media, you'll know there's so many different channels out there. You know, you look at just search. You might have Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, if anyone goes that way. On top of that, you know, if you're doing international campaigns, you will be using Baidu, Yandex. Going on social, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, programmatic, you know, you've got so many DSPs out there that you have to use. Affiliates, obviously, again, so many different placements you can put out there. But it's not only about the channels, right? You also have to start thinking about what are the different settings you have to put, right? Where are people? Where are they going to be targeted? What kind of language do you want to set to them? What device are they going to be? You know, these all require different strategies now. Oh, come on.
Yeah, okay.
That's right, you can go to that one. And then thirdly, you think about data. You know, Sal mentioned big data earlier. Now, we think about how much data we have right now compared to what we had even just 10 years ago. And this is really one of the main reasons why the amount of time it takes to set up, manage digital accounts now is so much greater. So my background's in PPC, so I'm going to move on to a bit more PPC focused here, but everything I say will still be important for all digital channels. So here's a graph that shows, roughly estimated, the number of tasks and aspects that you had to look at when setting up and managing a paid search account on Google from 2008 to the modern day. A decade ago, you'd have to think about things like what keywords do you want to target, what landing pages do you want to go to, what's your account structure, what ad copy do you want to use, maybe, you know, if you had a conversion pixel, and then putting analytics on. That was about it. You then ran it, saw how it worked, analyzed it every couple of weeks, and then moved on, maybe made a few adjustments to ad copy. Fast forward to now, and you think, how many different things are there? Ad copy on its own, you know, has about 30 different things you have to think about with the length of the ads. Do you use expanded text ads? Do you use normal text ads? All the different ad extensions that you use. You know, having all the feeds that feed into that, and to manage and optimize those. Then you look at tracking. I mean, just tracking on its own has gone up so much from the days of a single conversion pixel from Google has now become, you know, floodlight tags from a different ad server. Fitting that in, how does that fit into the rest of your tech stack? So, the question here is, do we have enough time right now? Now, before I go on to answering that big question, I'm just going to talk about a bit about optimization. So, activation is one, optimization is number two. When it comes to optimization, this is probably the most important thing as a specialist you have to do in your paid search or any digital account, right? It's what's going to drive performance for your clients. And I'm not talking about optimization here from, you know, analyzing keywords, looking at the best performance, and then, you know, upping your your bid settings, whatever. Talk about the foundational optimization here. You know, what you used to have to do back in the day to make sure the foundation of your accounts was the best it could be. Because without those, or without that being that good, everything you do above that, all data layers you put on top of that, aren't going to work to the maximum optimal level that they can. Yeah. So let me give you a quick quote from one of my good buddies, Heraclitus. So he said that the only constant in life is change. Now, I'm sure most of you here have heard this before, but it couldn't be more apt than for optimization in an account. I mean, what are you doing when you optimize an account? You're basically looking at the best way to change it and keep it going. If you have an account that's static, you're going to be left behind. It's going to slow down with the pace of the market, pace of competitors, and your performance is going to be nowhere near as good as it could be. Right? But then without optimization, then how do you analyze as well? Now, analysis is really one of the most important things because not only does it play a part in showing not only your clients or your brands, how is your performance going? How well has everything you've done in your accounts actually affected their businesses? But that analysis you do then gives you the insights that needs to feed back into the loop to adapt your first research and your strategy. Right? Going back to Sal's point earlier, when it comes to research never stays still. It's always evolving. It's always moving. And a lot of this comes from the data you guys get to put back into the researcher's path so they can look at other optimal areas to grow from. We working in digital, we're very lucky. We have some of the most real-time data available to us at scale. So we should be using this more and more. But with so much data, obviously comes a lot more scrutiny, a lot more diligence needed, and a lot more insights demanded, both from brands and from agencies and stakeholders. Now, this is really what I want to move on to now. With the amount of time you guys are spending on doing reporting, doing ad hoc tasks, doing research, and having to get these insights in for your clients, for your brands, where does that leave you time to do all the optimization and the activation? And so this circle might look like it's full, but it's broken at the moment, where you should be spending, 20, 30% on activation, 50, 60% on optimization, another 20, 30% on analysis. It's going in more, 10% optimization. Therefore, are you really going to be driving the best performance for your clients, for your brands, from any of your digital marketing channels? So, is time being used effectively? Well, to quote another one of my good buddies, William Penn, he said, "Time is what we want most, but what we use worst." And this couldn't be more true in how digital marketing is working right now. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not having a go at digital marketing or marketers or anything like that. What I'm trying to say here is too much time is being spent on things that don't give you as much performance, and the things that do give you more performance are not enough time is being spent on those. The things like ad copy testing, landing page testing, looking at the data in more granular detail. We're leaving it. There's bid management tools out there that we can use. The likes of SA360, Marin, Kenshu, those. But they only work as well as the data that goes into them. Right? So, what can we do about it? Now, as Sal said, we're from Adzooma. I've only been at Adzooma for 2.5 weeks. Before that, I was in PPC. So like I said before, always been in PPC all my life. Been using a lot of different tools and thinking to myself, great, this tool does one thing, this tool does another thing. But is there anything out there that can help me or help my teams get the foundations of their accounts right without it taking up too much of their time? So, what Adzooma does is that it automates those repetitive tasks for you. So all those foundational tasks where you have to pull SQRs, one of the most tedious things in the world. When you have to look at settings, have I got any 404 errors in my landing pages? Have I got any issues with my settings? Am I suddenly targeting the whole world instead of just the UK? No. This automates all of that for you. It gives you alerts. Not only does it give you the alert, it then also makes the changes for you, straight off the bat. So all you have to do then is look at what changes it's told you to do, and then one click, change done. Now think how much time that will save anyone who runs a paid search account. Secondly, makes reporting easier as well. So reporting is one of the banes of most of our lives. It's great for analysis and insight, but it's tedious again, having to do it every week, having to do different templates, and having to get it in the exact template that your brand or your client or even yourselves need to analyze it properly. What Adzooma does is you can basically manipulate a template within Adzooma, whatever you want, put whatever logos you want in there, and then automate it. And then on the roadmap right now is coming out the automation reporting tool, which will make reporting in all aspects a lot easier. And third and foremost, removes ad hoc vulnerability. So what I mean here is, how many of you guys get requests from your clients at the moment on the spur saying, I need something in 10 minutes? Yeah, there's a few nervous hands over here. It's fine. Everyone experiences it, right? It's not a bad thing. Obviously, they need the data really quickly. But at the same time, you might be working on something else. How do you combat that? Someone like Adzooma can then help you with that data in hand, setting up reports for your clients to then be able to get that data without having you to have to keep giving it to them. So we've talked about research. We talked about execution. And now I think we just want to say thank you very much for listening to us. If you guys do want to know more about Adzooma, Sal and myself will be around here for another half an hour, 45 minutes. So come and speak to us. We can take you through the tool in a bit more detail and answer any questions that you might have. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.